Earlier today admitted to making false statements in 2017 to a U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intel about a plan to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. Frankly, that is the only line on the Associated Press that's given us a clue as to what this is about. Back to Professor Dershowitz. Good morning again, sir. You made a comment a moment ago about the conflicted statements Michael Cohen has been through over the past year and a half. Do you believe legally he's a good witness, sir?
Well, legally, he's already, now he's admitting to making false statements, so his credibility as a witness diminishes. The question is whether he has information that might contradict what others have said about buildings in Moscow, or whether or not that constitutes any kind of criminal activity. I find that very hard to define. What's happening is the special prosecutor is making all of his cases based on false statements. It's interesting. In other parts of the world, you can't even prosecute people for that. But practically the entire series of indictments grows out of false statements rather than any substantive charges. Because, for example, hypothetically, if they were building buildings or planning to build buildings in Russia, surely that wouldn't be a crime. But lying about it might be a crime. So we're seeing many of these cases being built around false statements.
Mm-hmm. Before the Thanksgiving break, we were told to the White House the president submitted his written answers to Bob Mueller. Could that have an impact on what we're seeing here, or do you believe they're in different silos, sir?
Yes, I think it could. I think, as I said even before the president gave his answers, they're going to comb through every one of his answers and see if they can come up with anybody who can contradict anything the president said. That's why it's called a perjury trap, because even if the president believes what he said was true, if somebody will contradict it, then the president can be charged with lying to government officials, which is, the equivalent of perjury. So that's why it's so dangerous for anybody who is the subject of an investigation to answer questions by the prosecution, because the prosecution then combs through evidence, tries to get evidence that they can then use to show contradiction.
Mm-hmm. What is your reaction to the report of yesterday that Kevin Downing, the attorney for Paul Manafort, has been in contact with Rudy Giuliani, representing the president clearly, and for lack of a better
nothing
phrase,
wrong with that from the president's point of view. Any good lawyer tries to reach out to witnesses, even witnesses who are cooperating with the other side, perfectly legitimate to do it. In fact, it's illegal for a prosecutor to say to one of his witnesses that you can't talk to lawyers for the other side. The question is, was it smart for Manafort and his lawyer to do that? And maybe not so smart, because look what happened. The plea deal imploded, and now he's going to get sentenced even more harshly than he would have had he made no deal.
Yeah. My question was not based on something that was done illegally. If you're a lawyer, you want to gather as much information as possible. If I were Rudy Giuliani, I'd want to talk with Kevin Downing and find out what Mueller's asking and what questions he has, sir.
And that's entirely legitimate. In fact, it's almost mandatory. Any good lawyer should do anything he can that's ethical and legal to try to find out as much as possible about the case that's being built against his client.
You mentioned the perjury trap, sir. Do you think that all of these cases are based on that? Meaning,
I think a lot of them are. I think the weakness of Mueller's substantive findings are suggested by the fact that he has to resort to false statement prosecutions, which really shows that he didn't start with very much. That the very fact that he's conducting an investigation has created these crimes. These are not crimes that had been committed prior to his appointment. They're crimes that were committed as the result of his appointment. And that, raises some questions about the role of special prosecutors in creating crimes or creating opportunities for crimes to be committed. In the end, I don't think Mueller's going to come up with very much in terms of criminal conduct that existed before he was appointed. And that's quite shocking.
Yeah, well, that's a very low legal bar. For example, I ask you about a date and you get the date wrong. I ask you about an email, you get the email wrong. That would be under the definition perjury.
Yeah. Well, technically it has to be willful and knowing and deliberate. But that puts the burden really on the defendant to show that he made a mistake rather than lied, and that's sometimes hard to do.
Sir, stand by. Thank you very much, Professor Allen.
I was on Capitol Hill back in September of 2017 when Michael Cohen testified behind closed doors to the Senate Intelligence Committee, and this is one of these situations where I always like to go back to the documents. Just before that closed-door testimony, Cohen issued what was a 2-page statement, and I just want to draw your attention to one specific section which deals with this Trump project in Moscow. And it reads in part, and this is from Cohen, "I assume we will discuss the rejected proposal to build a Trump property in Moscow that was terminated in January of 2016, which occurred before the Iowa caucus and months before the very first primary. This was solely a real estate deal and nothing more," Cohen wrote. "I was doing my job. I would ask that the 2-page statement about the Moscow proposal that I sent to the committee in August be incorporated into and attached to this transcript." So this is key here. We've got at least 2 sets of records that relate to this Trump real estate proposal in Moscow. One is this written statement that was provided to the media by Michael Cohen that references a 2-page summary of the proposal that was sent to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. I'm not aware that that document has ever been made public, but I'm going to go back and check. But what you have here would at least be sort of the basis or the predicate, timeline, specifics about the proposal, why it was withdrawn, and how it related to the election cycle. And this could be the foundation for the making false statements about the project to Congress, so the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. So that's where I am right now, Bill. I'm going back through the records, which I think is a smart thing to do at this point, given what the allegations are about the proposal.
Thank you, Catherine. Stand by.
So Michael Cohen has made many statements to the House, as I understand it, and the Senate. He put out a statement talking about a project which was essentially, I guess, more or less of an option that we were looking at in Moscow. Everybody knew about it. It was written about in newspapers. It was a well-known project. It was during the early part of 16, and I guess even before that. It lasted a short period of time. I didn't do the project. I decided not to do the project, so I didn't do it. So we're not talking about doing a project. We're talking about not doing a project. Michael Cohen, what he's doing is he was convicted, I guess. You'll have to put it into legal terms. But he was convicted with a fairly long-term sentence on things totally unrelated to the Trump organization, having to do with mortgages and having to do with cheating the IRS, perhaps, a lot of different things. I don't know exactly, but he was convicted of various things unrelated to us. He was given a fairly long jail sentence, and he's a weak person. And by being weak, unlike other people that you watch, he's a weak person, and what he's trying to do is get a reduced sentence. So he's lying about a project that everybody knew about. I mean, we were very open with it. We were thinking about building a building. I guess we had in a form, it was an option. I don't know what you'd call it. I decided ultimately not to do it. There would have been nothing wrong if I did do it. If I did do it, there would have been nothing wrong. That was my business. So he's lying very simply to get a reduced sentence, okay?
Well, that's not supposed to happen. Hang with it. The audio clearly is in and out, but we'll stick with it as much as we can.
That doesn't mean I'm not allowed to do business. I was doing a lot of different things when I was running. After I won, obviously, I don't do business from January 20th, but more importantly, which is a following year. But I ran a business. In fact, I often joke about the fact that I was the only person that campaigned and simultaneously ran a business. But that was a project that we didn't do. I didn't do. That was a project that wasn't done for a lot of reasons. Number one is that I was really, not that I had to do it, but I was focused on running for president. I wanted that to be my primary focus, not running or building a building.
Tell him to lie.
Well, this was a deal that didn't happen. That was no deal. I mean, if you look, this was an option. I guess I don't know if I want to be very specific. So, but to my way of thinking, it was an option that I decided not to do. So we didn't. So if you look, we really didn't have. Excuse me. So excuse me. This was an option in a form, but here's very simple. We had a position to possibly do a deal to build a building of some kind in Moscow. I decided not to do it. The primary reason, there could have been other reasons, but the primary reason, it was very simple. I was focused on running for president. There would be nothing wrong if I did do it. I was running my business while I was campaigning. There was a good chance that I wouldn't have won, in which case I would have gone back into the business. And why should I lose lots of opportunities? So here's the story. Go back and look at the paper that Michael Cohen wrote before he testified in the House and/or Senate. It talked about his position, what he's trying to do, because he's a weak person and not a very smart person. What he's trying to do is end, and it's very simple. He's got himself a big prison sentence, and he's trying to get a much lesser prison sentence by making up a story. Now, here's the thing. Even if he was right, it doesn't matter, because I was allowed to do whatever I wanted during the campaign. I was running my business, a lot of different things during the campaign. So very simply, Michael Cohen is lying, and he's trying to get a reduced sentence for things that have nothing to do with me. Now, let me go a step further. I think you should go back to, I think it was January. It was just reported very well by Catherine Herridge, who's a terrific reporter on Fox. She talks about a letter that he signed. I don't even remember it. And it specifically talks about this deal. This deal was a very public deal. Everybody knows about this deal. I wasn't trying to hide anything. Okay. I cannot understand you.
Like Hamas and Hezbollah in Syria and Palestine. So when you see Putin, what are you going to tell him about these activities?
Well, we're going to talk about it, but we have a lot of things to talk about, Jeff.
You're going into a summit shortly. What is your sense about a trade deal with China? What do you expect to say to Mr. Xi?
I think we're very close to doing something with China, but I don't know that I want to do it, because what we have right now is billions and billions of dollars coming into the United States in the form of tariffs or taxes. So I really don't know, but I will tell you that I think China wants to make a deal. I'm open to making a deal, but frankly, I like the deal we have right now.
Are you going to meet with Trump? And if so, what are you going to do?
I probably will be meeting with President Putin. We haven't terminated that meeting. I was thinking about it, but we haven't. They'd like to have it. I think it's a very good time to have the meeting. I'm getting a full report on the plane as to what happened with respect to that, and that will determine what I'm going to be doing. Okay?
You said you were getting a full report on Tuesday. Did you get that report, and what did it say?
Well, I have a couple of reports. We're getting a finalized report. Are you talking about on the Russian situation with the ship and the Ukraine? Yeah. We're getting a finalized report. I'm going to have it on the plane sometime today.
Why are you meeting with the Crown Prince?
It just wasn't set up. It only wasn't set up. I mean, I would have met with him, but we didn't set that one up. I'm meeting with President Xi, which is a very important meeting, having to do with trade. And as you know, I'm making about 3 or 4 meetings. We just didn't have time.
If Cohen is
Mr. President, are you going to be ready to engage with new Americans held in China with President?
I'm going to bring it up, yes.
what about the peace process?
I don't hear you. You got to talk. You see that? You have a helicopter. No, the question was asked yesterday about pardons with respect to Paul Manafort, who, it's very sad what's happened to Paul, the way he's being treated. I've never seen anybody treated so poorly. But the question was asked to me by the New York Post, and I said, no, I have not offered any pardons. And I think they asked, or whatever, would you? I said, I'm not taking anything off the table. That was done as a question from the New York Post.
Did you tell Michael Cohen what to tell
If Cohen is such a bum, why did you hire him, have him on your payroll for 12 years, and have him do so much of your dirty work?
Because a long time ago, he did me a favor. A long time ago, he did me a favor. No, not at all. Not at all. I'm not worried at all about him. You just take a look at his written document. Go back, take a look at what he wrote in, I think, January. He has a written statement, and that's the fact. Yeah.
There is a campaign in the city of Strasbourg who wants to push people to vote for the European election, saying, France, we don't want the European Union to be like Trump's America. What do you want to tell them? What do you want?
I don't know what, you know, you can't with a helicopter. Sorry.
What do you want to tell them?
A possible shutdown if we don't get the wall money. A very possible. We're in negotiation. If we don't get border security, possible shutdown. See you all.